The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council was unlike anything a human could imagine. The walls shimmered with colors that didn't exist on Earth, and the air buzzed with the hum of advanced technology. At the center of the hall, a massive circular table floated above the ground, surrounded by the most powerful beings in the galaxy. They were the Galactic Council, the rulers of countless star systems, and today, they had gathered to judge one insignificant human. The human stood in the middle of the hall, his hands bound by glowing energy cuffs. He was tall but thin, with messy hair and tired eyes. His clothes were simple, the kind you'd see on a farmer or a laborer. He looked out of place among the towering, alien figures around him. But what caught everyone's attention was his calmness. He didn't tremble or beg for mercy. He just stood there, silent and defiant. The leader of the council, a tall, lizard-like creature with scales that glinted like gold, leaned forward. His voice was deep and mocking. "So, this is the human who dared to defy the alien king? This is the creature who thought he could impregnate the king's daughter and walk away unscathed?" The room erupted in laughter. The council members, each more bizarre and terrifying than the last, pointed at the human and jeered. One of them, a creature with multiple eyes and tentacles, sneered, "Look at him. He's so weak, so pathetic. How could he even think of touching the king's daughter?" Another member, a being made entirely of light, chimed in. "Humans are nothing but pests. They have no place in our galaxy. This one should be made an example of." The human didn't react. He just stared at the council, his eyes steady. His silence only made the council angrier. The lizard-like leader slammed his clawed hand on the table. "Speak, human. Defend yourself if you can. Or are you too cowardly to even try?" For a moment, there was silence. Then, the human took a deep breath and spoke. His voice was calm but firm, and it carried a strength that surprised everyone in the room. "You call me weak," he said, "but I've survived things you couldn't imagine. You call me a pest, but I've done something none of you ever could. I've shown love to someone you cast aside. And for that, you want to punish me?" The council members exchanged glances, their laughter fading. The human's words had struck a nerve. Before anyone could respond, he continued. "You sit here, judging me, but you're the ones who are blind. You're so afraid of anything different that you can't see the truth. And the truth is, your galaxy is dying. You're so busy fighting each other that you've forgotten what it means to live. But I haven't. And neither has she." The room fell silent. The council members stared at the human, unsure of what to say. Even the lizard-like leader seemed taken aback. But before he could respond, the human said something that shocked everyone. "If you kill me," he said, "you'll be killing the only hope your galaxy has left." The room erupted into chaos. Council members shouted at each other, some demanding the human's immediate execution, others calling for more information. The human stood quietly, a small smile playing on his lips. He had planted a seed of doubt, and he knew it. As the chaos continued, the lizard-like leader raised his hand, silencing the room. He glared at the human, his golden eyes narrowing. "You think you're clever, human. But you've only delayed the inevitable. We will decide your fate, and there will be no mercy." The human didn't flinch. He just nodded, as if he had expected this all along. "Do what you must," he said. "But remember this, you're not just judging me. You're judging the future of your galaxy." The council members exchanged uneasy glances. For the first time, they seemed unsure of themselves. The human had thrown them off balance, and they didn't know how to respond. As the meeting adjourned, the human was led away, his fate still uncertain. But one thing was clear, this was only the beginning. Life on Earth had been simple for the human. He lived in a small village surrounded by mountains and forests. Every day, he woke up early, worked in the fields, and came home to a modest house. He wasn't rich or famous, but he was content. He had a kind heart and a quiet strength that made people respect him. But deep down, he often wondered if there was more to life than this. One night, as he was walking home under a sky full of stars, something strange happened. A bright light appeared in the sky, growing larger and larger until it was right above him. Before he could react, a beam of light shot down and engulfed him. He felt a strange pulling sensation, and then everything went black. When he woke up, he was no longer on Earth. He was in a cold, metallic room with walls that seemed to pulse with energy. Strange creatures with glowing eyes and robotic limbs surrounded him, speaking in a language he couldn't understand. He tried to fight, but they were too strong. They injected him with something, and he fell unconscious again. The next time he woke up, he was on an alien planet. The sky was a deep purple, and the air smelled like metal and smoke. He was put to work in a massive factory, alongside other humans and aliens. They were treated like slaves, forced to build strange machines for their alien masters. It was a harsh life, but the human never lost hope. He believed that one day, he would find a way to escape. One day, while working in the factory, he noticed something unusual. A group of aliens in fancy robes entered the factory, followed by a young alien woman. She was different from the others. Her skin was a soft blue, and her eyes were filled with sadness. She walked with her head down, as if she was trying to avoid attention. The human couldn't take his eyes off her. There was something about her that drew him in. Later, he learned that she was the alien king's daughter. But unlike her father, she was kind and gentle. She often visited the factory to bring food and water to the workers, even though her father disapproved. One day, as she was handing out food, she tripped and fell. The human rushed to help her. Their eyes met, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. She smiled at him, and he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, hope. From that day on, they started talking whenever she visited the factory. She told him about her life, how she felt trapped in her father's shadow, and how she dreamed of a better future. He told her about Earth, about the mountains and forests, and the simple life he had left behind. They found comfort in each other's company, and slowly, their friendship grew into something more. But their love was forbidden. The alien king would never allow his daughter to be with a human, especially one who was a slave. They knew the risks, but they couldn't stay away from each other. They met in secret, sharing stolen moments of happiness in a world that seemed determined to keep them apart. One night, as they sat under the alien sky, she told him something that changed everything. "I'm pregnant," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We're going to have a child." The human's heart swelled with joy, but he also felt fear. He knew what this meant. If the alien king found out, there would be no mercy. They had to be careful, but they also had to be brave. For the first time in his life, the human felt like he had a purpose. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for her, and for their unborn child. But their happiness didn't last long. One day, the alien king discovered their secret. He was furious. He ordered the human to be captured and brought before the Galactic Council. The king's daughter begged for mercy, but her father was unmoved. "You have disgraced our family," he said coldly. "This human will pay for what he has done." As the human was taken away, he looked back at her one last time. Her eyes were filled with tears, but she nodded, as if to say, "I'll fight for you." He held on to that thought as he was dragged into the unknown, ready to face whatever came next. The alien king's palace was a towering structure of black stone and glowing crystals, a symbol of his power and dominance. Inside, the halls were filled with the echoes of his rage. The king, a massive figure with sharp, angular features and eyes that burned like fire, paced back and forth in his throne room. His daughter stood before him, her head bowed but her fists clenched in defiance. "How could you do this?" the king roared, his voice shaking the walls. "How could you betray me like this? A human? A slave? You have brought shame to our family." The daughter looked up, her blue eyes filled with tears but also determination. "Father, it's not what you think. He's not just a human. He's kind, he's brave, and he loves me. Isn't that what matters?" The king's face twisted in anger. "Love? What does a human know of love? They are weak, primitive creatures. They have no place in our world, and certainly no place in our family." "You're wrong," she said, her voice trembling but strong. "He's shown me more kindness and understanding than anyone else ever has. He sees me for who I am, not just as your daughter. Isn't that worth something?" The king's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, there was silence. Then, he slammed his fist on the armrest of his throne, the sound echoing through the room. "Enough. I will not listen to this nonsense. That human has corrupted you, and he will pay for what he has done." He turned to his guards, who stood at attention near the door. "Bring him to me. Now." The daughter's heart sank. She knew what this meant. Her father was going to punish the human, and there was nothing she could do to stop him. But she couldn't give up. She had to try. "Father, please," she begged, stepping forward. "If you do this, you'll regret it. He's not just a human. He's the father of your grandchild." The king froze, his eyes widening in shock. "What did you say?" She took a deep breath, her hands resting on her stomach. "I'm pregnant. We're going to have a child. Your grandchild." For a moment, the king was speechless. Then, his face turned red with fury. "You dare to tell me this? You dare to bring a half-human child into our family? This is an insult to our bloodline, to our legacy." The daughter's eyes filled with tears, but she stood her ground. "It's not an insult. It's a new beginning. A chance for our family to grow, to change. Can't you see that?" The king's expression hardened. "No. I see only weakness and betrayal. That human has poisoned your mind, and now he will pay the price." He turned to his guards again. "Take her to her chambers. She is not to leave until I say so." The guards moved forward, but the daughter stepped back, her eyes blazing. "No. I won't let you do this. If you hurt him, I'll never forgive you." The king's voice was cold and final. "You will do as you're told. And when this is over, you will understand why I had to do this." The guards grabbed her arms and began to drag her away. She struggled, but they were too strong. As she was taken from the room, she looked back at her father one last time. "You're making a mistake," she said, her voice breaking. "And one day, you'll realize it." The king didn't respond. He turned away, his face a mask of anger and determination. He had made his decision, and nothing would change his mind. Later that day, the human was brought before the king. He was bruised and battered, but his eyes still held that same quiet defiance. The king glared at him, his voice dripping with contempt. "You thought you could take what was mine," the king said. "You thought you could defy me and get away with it. But now, you will learn the price of your arrogance." The human didn't flinch. "I didn't take anything," he said calmly. "What we have is real. And no matter what you do, you can't change that." The king's eyes narrowed. "We'll see about that. You will be brought before the Galactic Council, and they will decide your fate. But know this, there will be no mercy." The human nodded, as if he had expected this all along. "Do what you must," he said. "But remember, you're not just punishing me. You're punishing your daughter, and your grandchild." The king's face twisted in anger, but he didn't respond. He simply waved his hand, and the guards dragged the human away. As he was taken from the room, the king sat back on his throne, his mind racing. He had won this battle, but deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had lost something far more important. The Galactic Council's chamber was even more intimidating the second time. The human stood in the center of the room, his hands still bound by the glowing energy cuffs. The council members, towering and alien, stared down at him with a mix of curiosity and disdain. The air was thick with tension, and the human could feel the weight of their judgment pressing down on him. The lizard-like leader of the council leaned forward, his golden eyes narrowing. "Human," he said, his voice cold and mocking, "you stand accused of defying the alien king and impregnating his daughter. How do you plead?" The human took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the room. He knew this was his only chance to speak, and he had to make it count. "I plead not guilty," he said firmly. "I didn't defy anyone. What happened between me and the king's daughter was out of love, not rebellion." The council members exchanged glances, some of them snickering. The tentacled creature with multiple eyes sneered. "Love? What does a human know of love? You are nothing but a primitive creature, driven by base instincts." The human didn't back down. "You call me primitive, but I've seen more kindness and compassion in my short life than you have in your entire existence. The king's daughter is not a possession to be controlled. She's a person, with her own thoughts and feelings. And she chose me, just as I chose her." The council members fell silent, their laughter fading. The human's words had struck a nerve, and they didn't know how to respond. The lizard-like leader leaned back, his expression unreadable. "You speak boldly for someone in your position. But words alone will not save you. The alien king demands justice, and we are here to deliver it." The human nodded. "I understand. But before you decide my fate, I ask you to consider this: what kind of justice punishes love? What kind of justice destroys a family before it even has a chance to exist?" The room was silent. Even the council members seemed unsure of what to say. The human's words had planted a seed of doubt, and it was beginning to grow. The being made of light spoke next, its voice echoing like a chime. "The human raises a valid point. Perhaps we should consider the broader implications of this case. If we punish him, what message are we sending to the galaxy? That love between species is a crime?" The tentacled creature slammed its tentacles on the table. "Nonsense. This is not about love. This is about order. The alien king's authority must be respected, or chaos will follow." The lizard-like leader raised his hand, silencing the room. "Enough. We will hear from the alien king before we make our decision." The doors to the chamber opened, and the alien king entered, his presence commanding immediate attention. He strode to the center of the room, his eyes burning with anger. "Council members," he said, his voice cold and sharp, "this human has defied me and corrupted my daughter. He must be punished, or my authority will be undermined." The human turned to face the king, his expression calm but defiant. "I didn't corrupt her. I showed her kindness and respect, something she never received from you. And now, we have a child. Your grandchild. Is that really something you want to destroy?" The king's face twisted in rage, but before he could respond, the lizard-like leader spoke. "Enough. We have heard enough. The council will now deliberate." The council members huddled together, their voices low and intense. The human stood quietly, his heart pounding. He knew his fate was in their hands, but he also knew he had done everything he could. After what felt like an eternity, the council members returned to their seats. The lizard-like leader stood, his expression grave. "We have reached a decision," he said. "The human will be." Before he could finish, the doors to the chamber burst open. The alien king's daughter rushed in, her face flushed and her eyes filled with determination. The guards tried to stop her, but she pushed past them, standing beside the human. "Stop," she shouted, her voice echoing through the room. "You can't do this. If you punish him, you're punishing me, and our child. Is that really the kind of justice you want?" The room fell silent. The council members stared at her, their expressions a mix of shock and confusion. The alien king's face turned red with anger, but he didn't say a word. The daughter turned to the council, her voice trembling but strong. "Please," she said. "Don't do this. Give us a chance. Let us show you that love can bridge even the widest divides." The council members exchanged glances, their earlier certainty wavering. The lizard-like leader leaned forward, his golden eyes narrowing. "This changes things," he said slowly. "We will need to reconsider." The human looked at the daughter, his heart swelling with gratitude and love. No matter what happened next, he knew they had fought for each other, and that was all that mattered. The alien king's daughter stood tall in the center of the Galactic Council's chamber, her blue skin glowing under the harsh lights. Her eyes, filled with determination, swept across the room, meeting the gazes of the council members and her father. The human beside her looked at her with a mix of awe and gratitude. He had never seen her like this, strong, fearless, and unyielding. The alien king's face was a mask of fury. "How dare you interrupt these proceedings," he roared, his voice shaking the walls. "You will return to your chambers at once." She didn't flinch. "No, father. I won't. Not until you listen to me. Not until you understand." The king stepped forward, his towering figure casting a shadow over her. "You have disgraced our family enough. Do not make this worse." She held her ground, her voice steady. "I'm not the one disgracing our family. You are. By refusing to see the truth. By refusing to let me live my life." The council members watched in silence, their expressions a mix of curiosity and unease. The lizard-like leader raised a hand, his golden eyes narrowing. "Let her speak," he said. "We will hear what she has to say." The daughter took a deep breath, her hands resting on her stomach. "I know you all see me as the alien king's daughter, a pawn to be controlled. But I'm more than that. I'm a person with my own dreams and desires. And I love him." She gestured to the human beside her. "Not because he's perfect or powerful, but because he sees me for who I am. He treats me with kindness and respect, something I've never felt from anyone else." The king's face twisted in anger, but before he could speak, the daughter continued. "And now, we're going to have a child. A child who will be a part of both our worlds. Isn't that something to celebrate? Isn't that a sign that we can overcome our differences and build a better future?" The room was silent. Even the council members seemed moved by her words. The tentacled creature with multiple eyes leaned forward, its voice softer than before. "You speak of unity, but your actions have caused division. Your father's authority has been challenged, and the stability of our galaxy is at risk." She shook her head. "The only division here is the one you've created. By clinging to old prejudices and refusing to change. But change is inevitable. And if you punish us, you're not just punishing me and him. You're punishing the future." The king stepped forward again, his voice cold and final. "Enough. I will not listen to this nonsense. You will return to your chambers, and this human will face justice." The daughter's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't back down. "No, father. I won't let you do this. If you punish him, you'll have to punish me too. Because I won't abandon him. Not now. Not ever." The king's face turned red with rage, but before he could respond, the lizard-like leader stood. "This has gone on long enough. The council will adjourn to deliberate. We will consider all that has been said." The king turned to the leader, his voice sharp. This is an insult to my authority. I demand that you make a decision now. The leader's golden eyes narrowed. Your authority does not override the council's judgment. We will take the time we need. The king clenched his fists, but he said nothing. He knew he had no choice but to wait. As the council members began to leave the chamber, the daughter turned to the human, her eyes filled with hope. We've done all we can, she whispered. Now, we wait. He nodded, his heart swelling with love and admiration for her. No matter what happens, he said, I'm proud of you. And I'll always be by your side. She smiled, a single tear rolling down her cheek. I know. And that's why we'll get through this. Together. The guards began to lead them away, but the daughter held her head high. She had defied her father, challenged the Galactic Council, and fought for the man she loved. No matter what happened next, she knew she had done the right thing. The Galactic Council's chamber was eerily quiet as the members returned to their seats. The tension in the room was palpable, and the human and the alien king's daughter stood side by side, their hands clasped tightly. The alien king sat in a corner, his face a mask of anger and frustration. He had lost control of the situation, and it was clear he didn't like it. The lizard-like leader of the council stood, his golden eyes scanning the room. We have heard the arguments, he said, his voice calm but firm. Now, it is time for us to decide the fate of the human and the alien king's daughter. The daughter stepped forward, her voice trembling but strong. Before you make your decision, there's something you need to know. Something that changes everything. The council members exchanged glances, their curiosity piqued. The tentacled creature with multiple eyes leaned forward. Speak, it said. But choose your words carefully. She took a deep breath, her hands resting on her stomach. Our child, she said, is not just a symbol of love between two people. It's a symbol of hope for the entire galaxy. A hope that we can overcome our differences and build a better future. The room was silent, the council members listening intently. She continued, her voice growing stronger. But there's more. Our child is special. It carries within it the genetic code of both humans and our species. A code that could hold the key to saving our galaxy. The council members gasped, their eyes widening in shock. Even the alien king looked stunned. The lizard-like leader leaned forward, his golden eyes narrowing. What are you saying? She looked at him, her eyes filled with determination. Our scientists have been studying the genetic compatibility between humans and our species for years. They've discovered that the combination of our DNA could create a new generation of beings with enhanced abilities. Beings who could help us solve the problems that plague our galaxy: disease, famine, war. Our child is the first of its kind. A living proof that this is possible. The room erupted into chaos. Council members shouted at each other, some demanding more information, others calling for calm. The alien king stood, his face pale. Is this true? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She nodded. Yes, father. It's true. And if you punish us, you're not just punishing me and him. You're punishing the future of our galaxy. The lizard-like leader raised his hand, silencing the room. This changes everything, he said. If what you say is true, then this child is not just a personal matter. It's a matter of galactic importance. The tentacled creature nodded. We must consider the implications. If this child has the potential to save our galaxy, then we cannot afford to destroy it. The alien king sank back into his seat, his face a mix of shock and disbelief. He had been so focused on his anger and pride that he hadn't considered the bigger picture. Now, he was forced to confront the truth. The daughter turned to him, her eyes filled with tears. Father, I know you're angry. I know you feel betrayed. But this is bigger than us. This is about the future of our galaxy. Please, don't let your pride destroy that. The king looked at her, his expression softening. For the first time, he saw her not as his daughter, but as a strong, courageous woman who was fighting for something greater than herself. He sighed, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I didn't know, he said quietly. I didn't understand. She stepped forward, taking his hand. It's not too late to make things right. We can still build a better future. Together. The room fell silent as the council members watched the scene unfold. The lizard-like leader stood, his voice calm but firm. We have heard enough. The council will now make its decision. The human and the daughter stood together, their hearts pounding as they waited for the verdict. No matter what happened next, they knew they had done everything they could. And for the first time, they felt a glimmer of hope. The alien king sat in silence, his mind racing. The revelation about his grandchild had shaken him to his core. For years, he had ruled with an iron fist, believing that strength and control were the only ways to maintain order. But now, faced with the truth, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: doubt. He looked at his daughter, standing tall and defiant beside the human. Her eyes were filled with tears, but also with hope. She had always been strong-willed, but he had never seen her like this, so determined, so fearless. And for the first time, he felt a pang of guilt. Had he been so blinded by his own pride that he had failed to see her for who she truly was? The Galactic Council members were still debating, their voices low and intense. The lizard-like leader stood, his golden eyes narrowing as he addressed the king. Your daughter has presented a compelling argument. The child she carries could be the key to our galaxy's future. But this decision affects you as well. What do you have to say? The king stood slowly, his massive frame towering over everyone in the room. He looked at his daughter, then at the human, and finally at the council. His voice was quiet but firm. I was wrong. The room fell silent. Even the council members seemed stunned. The king continued, his voice growing stronger. I let my anger and pride cloud my judgment. I thought I was protecting my family, but all I was doing was pushing my daughter away. And now, I see the truth. This child, my grandchild, is not a mistake. It's a miracle. The daughter's eyes filled with tears, and she stepped forward, taking her father's hand. Father, she whispered, her voice trembling. He looked at her, his expression softening. I'm sorry, he said. I should have listened to you. I should have trusted you. But I'm ready to make things right. If you'll let me. She nodded, a small smile breaking through her tears. Of course, Father. We can do this together. The human stepped forward, his eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, he said simply. This means more to me than you'll ever know. The king looked at him, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then, he nodded. You've shown more courage and strength than I ever expected. You've earned my respect. The room was silent as the council members watched the scene unfold. The lizard-like leader stood, his voice calm but firm. This changes things. If the alien king supports this union, then we must consider the implications for the entire galaxy. The tentacled creature nodded. Indeed. This child could be the key to our survival. We cannot afford to destroy it. The being made of light spoke next, its voice echoing like a chime. Then it is decided. The human and the alien king's daughter will be allowed to remain together. Their child will be protected and studied, for the good of the galaxy. The daughter's face lit up with joy, and she turned to the human, her eyes shining. We did it, she whispered. We're going to be okay. He smiled, pulling her into a tight embrace. We did it together. The king watched them, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of peace. He had been so focused on maintaining control that he had forgotten what truly mattered: family, love, and hope. As the council members began to leave the chamber, the king stepped forward, his voice strong and clear. "Thank you," he said, "for giving me a second chance. I won't waste it." The lizard-like leader nodded. "See that you don't. The future of our galaxy depends on it." The king turned to his daughter and the human, his expression filled with determination. "Let's go home," he said. "We have a lot of work to do." The Galactic Council's chamber was filled with a tense silence as the members prepared to deliver their final verdict. The human and the alien king's daughter stood side by side, their hands clasped tightly. The alien king stood nearby, his expression calm but determined. He had made his choice, and now it was up to the council to decide the fate of his family. The lizard-like leader of the council stood, his golden eyes scanning the room. After careful consideration, he began, his voice calm but firm, "We have reached a decision." The room held its breath. The daughter's heart pounded in her chest, and the human squeezed her hand reassuringly. They had come so far, fought so hard. Now, everything hung in the balance. The leader continued. "The human and the alien king's daughter will be allowed to remain together. Their child will be recognized as a citizen of the galaxy, with all the rights and protections that entails. Furthermore, the child will be studied under the supervision of the council, to ensure that its unique genetic code is used for the benefit of all." The daughter's eyes filled with tears of relief, and she turned to the human, her face breaking into a radiant smile. "We did it," she whispered. "We're going to be okay." He smiled back, his heart swelling with gratitude and love. "We did it together." The alien king stepped forward, his voice strong and clear. "Thank you," he said, "for giving us a chance to make things right. I will ensure that this child is raised with the love and care it deserves, and that its potential is used to benefit the galaxy." The lizard-like leader nodded. "See that you do. The future of our galaxy depends on it." The tentacled creature with multiple eyes spoke next, its voice softer than before. "This decision is not just about you. It's about all of us. We must learn to overcome our differences and work together, or we will never survive." The being made of light added, its voice echoing like a chime. "Love and unity are the keys to our survival. Let this child be a symbol of that." The council members stood, their expressions solemn but hopeful. They had made their decision, and now it was up to the alien king, his daughter, and the human to honor it. As the council members began to leave the chamber, the daughter turned to her father, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you, Father," she said, "for standing by us." He nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I should have done it sooner. But I'm here now, and I'll do everything I can to support you." The human stepped forward, his expression filled with respect. "Thank you," he said. "This means more to me than I can ever say." The king looked at him, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then, he nodded. "You've proven yourself to be a man of courage and strength. You've earned my respect, and my trust." The daughter smiled, her heart overflowing with joy. For the first time in her life, she felt truly free. Free to love, free to live, and free to build a future with the man she loved. As they left the chamber, the human turned to her, his eyes filled with hope. "This is just the beginning," he said. "We have a lot of work to do, but we'll do it together." She nodded, her hand resting on her stomach. "Together," she said. "For our child, and for the future of the galaxy." The alien king watched them, a sense of peace settling over him. He had spent his life ruling with an iron fist, but now he saw a different path, a path of love, unity, and hope. And for the first time, he felt truly proud of the family he had built. The sky above Earth was a brilliant blue, dotted with fluffy white clouds. The human stood on a grassy hill, his arm around the alien king's daughter as they looked out over the rolling green landscape. It was a stark contrast to the cold, metallic world they had left behind, and it felt like a fresh start, a new beginning. Their child, a beautiful baby with soft blue skin and bright, curious eyes, lay in the daughter's arms, cooing softly. The human smiled down at the baby, his heart swelling with love and pride. This child was a symbol of everything they had fought for: love, unity, and hope. The alien king stood a few steps behind them, his expression thoughtful. He had come to Earth to see his grandchild and to witness the life his daughter had chosen. At first, he had been skeptical of this primitive planet, but now, as he looked out over the peaceful landscape, he began to understand why his daughter had fallen in love with it. "It's beautiful," he said quietly, his voice filled with awe. The daughter turned to him, her eyes shining. "It is, father. And it's home." The king nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I can see why you love it here. There's a simplicity, a purity, that we've lost in our world." The human stepped forward, his expression filled with gratitude. "Thank you for coming," he said. "It means a lot to us." The king looked at him, his expression softening. "You've given me a second chance," he said. "A chance to be a better father, a better grandfather. And for that, I'm grateful." The daughter smiled, her heart overflowing with joy. For the first time in her life, she felt truly at peace. She had her father's support, the love of her life by her side, and a beautiful child to raise. It was more than she had ever dreamed of. As they stood together on the hill, the human turned to the king, his expression serious. "We have a lot of work to do," he said. "Our child is special, and we need to make sure its potential is used for good. But we can't do it alone. We need your help." The king nodded, his expression filled with determination. "You have it. I'll do everything I can to support you, and to ensure that this child has the future it deserves." The daughter smiled, her eyes filled with hope. "Together, we can build a better future. Not just for our child, but for the entire galaxy." The king looked at her, his expression filled with pride. "You've grown into a remarkable woman," he said. "And I'm proud to call you my daughter." She smiled, her heart swelling with love. "Thank you, father. That means more to me than you'll ever know." As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the landscape, the human turned to the daughter, his eyes filled with love. "This is just the beginning," he said. "We have a lot of challenges ahead, but we'll face them together." She nodded, her hand resting on their child's tiny head. "Together," she said. "For our child, and for the future of the galaxy." The king watched them, a sense of peace settling over him. He had spent his life ruling with an iron fist, but now he saw a different path, a path of love, unity, and hope. And for the first time, he felt truly proud of the family he had built. As they walked back to their small, cozy home, the human turned to the daughter, his heart filled with gratitude. "We've come a long way," he said. "And we've still got a long way to go. But I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else." She smiled, her eyes shining with love. "Neither would I." And as they stepped into their home, the baby in their arms, they knew that they had found something truly special, a love that transcended boundaries, a hope that could change the galaxy, and a future filled with endless possibilities.